Before we dive in, most leaders aren't stuck because they lack skill. They're stuck because of what they're hiding. That's why I built the Lead Without Hiding Challenge. Grab your seat at leadwithouthiding.com. All right, let's get into it. Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoff Show with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoff. On today's show, I'm joined by Josh Zolin. Josh is the former Hollywood stuntman turned CEO. He owns Windy City Equipment, an HVAC company, but that's just not even a great description. An 8-figures organization that was started by his dad. He's taken over. He's leading it, helping grow that and serve the community in a way that maybe you don't always see. That's a blue-collar trade that our world is embracing so much. Josh, great to be here with you.
Tyler, just thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Josh, as we jump into this, one of the things that we talked about a little bit is you taking over, the company as CEO when you were young, right? And as I work with a lot of people that are thrust into the role of leadership, whether by choice, by, accident, however that happens, what was maybe one of the early moments in leading that caught you by surprise, and potentially what did it cost you?
Yeah, I love that question, by the way.
Okay, all right.
And because it points me to a clear answer. My answer to that is, I think that when people are put into leadership, whether they want it or whether they don't or whatever, the assumption immediately for a young leader is that your job is to tell people what to do. And that's exactly what I thought my job was at 27 years old when I was trying to lead people twice my age with 3 times the experience. And then I would wonder why they wouldn't do what I said. It wasn't until I discovered the power of questions that I really was able to blossom as a leader. And I gravitate back to a phrase I wish I could take credit for. I heard it somewhere, but it's people resist what they're told and they accept what they conclude. And that changed everything for me. Once I understood that concept, I started to really dive deep into the power of questions and learning more about the types of questions that I had to ask in order to get people to conclude whatever it is that I was trying, to get them to do, not in a way of manipulation, but in just a way of almost empowerment, right? And the questions that I used, the 2 types, not to make a short story long, but we've got curious questions, which help you as a leader with your understanding in any topic, which you need, right? That's the prerequisite. If you're going to help anybody, you need to understand what it is that you're helping with. So the curious questions are, what are you looking at? What have you done? What are some of the solutions? And just to help you understand what the dynamics are. And then you move to thought-provoking questions. And this is where the magic happens. This is where leadership actually takes form, because you can help these people come to the conclusions themselves with as much understanding as they need to do it again the next time. So you're not always the one facilitating the answer. They can start to do this themselves. And listen, at the end of the day, the objective of leaders is to breed more leaders. So these thought-provoking questions provide a platform to where you can help people conclude these answers themselves. Some examples to that would be like immediately following, what have you done? Okay, what do you think is the best solution? Why don't you go try that? And really help encourage these next steps, but from the information that they gave you.
From the idea of questions, the guiding and leading, where for you as a person, but also as your organization, does the element of authenticity and just finding and being the real you really show up for yourself and then everyone that works at Windy City?
Authenticity is a trigger word, man.
Okay, bring it.
Yeah. No, it's just by phrasing it that way and just by saying, I'm going to be authentic today, almost breeds an element of inauthenticity.
Okay.
And I say that because it's performative at that point, right? You move beyond doing what you would do intuitively to doing what you rehearse, that you've decided already that makes you authentic. And so it's a really fine line there. And I've found this out by experience. And listen, I'm open to being wrong about this. I'm open to disagreeing about it. But for me, when somebody says, I'm going to be authentic, makes it really hard for me to be like, okay, great start.
I love it.
Yeah. And to me, were you going to say something?
No, I love it because it correlates to when people like, can I be honest? I'm like, no, I'd much rather you freaking lie to me. Like, hey, just lie to me. And it's like, and so I appreciate the way that you responded, because I take it with lying, but also I think what you lend to is, if we were to just sit here, right, Josh, we go back and forth. All right, define authenticity, right? Being authentic. And I think we could probably very closely come to the same definition. It's being the real you. It's not worrying about who do you need to be to impress whoever, just be you, right? That's how I view it. Similar?
Yeah.
Okay. Where I think you're pointing at, and I love it, is the difference between, quote unquote, this world of toxic authenticity. This is who I am. You have to deal with it. No, that's just licensed to be an a-hole, and no one needs that person.
Yeah. It's also confusion, I think, because this is projected on us, in the masses, right? Over social media and in every podcast and publication you read. There's this, you've got these buckets of things people talk about now. It's culture, it's authenticity, it's integrity, and these things, they become ingrained, but there's a billion definitions no matter where you look. This information overload that we're experiencing, in the modern day world. And so I feel like there's a way to show up. And then there's a way to be, right? We are human beings. We are not human doings. You've undoubtedly heard that before. Yeah. And that this is where I try to guide my team. Part of your question was, how do you show up this way and how do you guide your team this way? So I show up this way by not fucking thinking about it. Okay. I mean, I'm just going to be frank with you. I show up this way by completely removing it from my mind and allowing myself to be and move through the world as who I am. Okay, which aligns with our definition, right? Yeah. It's just not front and center with a title over it of authenticity. Yeah. And I try to project that on my team in much of the same way, although it's a hard concept to understand from the way I'm positioning it. And that's not lost on me either.
So good.
So so I try to one thing I like to, and I think it kind of goes into the same bucket, but one thing that I like to challenge my team with is this idea of power versus force. Are you familiar with this?
Mm-hmm. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so power coming from a place of love, coming from a place of excitement, genuine interest, authenticity, if you want to group it into that bucket, and just of positive energy. Playing to win, not playing not to lose. Whereas force is the equal and opposite. It's coming from a place of fear, of ego, of anger, and playing not to lose. Mm-hmm. And so, I like to kind of frame this as a prerequisite to how you should show up every day at work, what I'm looking for between how you make decisions, how you lead people, and ultimately how you show up. Are you coming from a place of power, or are you coming from a place of force?
Where does genuineness fit into that whole word salad of again, the descriptions of power, force? How do you think that fits in?
Genuine it's a good question.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Let me think about that for 2 seconds. So I think genuine is in the awareness. So it doesn't fit into power or force. It fits into understanding and being aware of how you're carrying yourself. Because at any given point, any of us can come from a place of power or a place of force. It's this fluid thing. No one lives in one state their entire life, every second of every day. But the only thing that would ever shift us from force back to power is being aware that that's what you're genuinely doing. So to answer your question, I think that being genuine is this layer of awareness that sits above, this power and force, this baseline.
So now compare and contrast authenticity to that.
I think it's much of the same thing. How would you do it?
I think, not leading you, but that is my opinion, right? Is whether we call it being genuine or being authentic. It's just kind of, it can be much the same, right? And as you qualified, I think it's similar words. That's why I asked. I also completely agree with at first when people are just throwing around authenticity. Whoa. We have to qualify that. Are you walking into the office and saying, I'm just going to be a prick today because that's who I am and I feel like being a prick and everyone needs to be okay with them? Like, no, that's not authenticity. That is you putting on a mask. That is you putting on armor and expecting everyone else to just deal with it. And one of the things that I've realized in my growth and in hearing and reading parts of your work and understanding your challenges at times to find, all right, where's my place? That's how I read it, right? Is there's overcoming, can I do this? Is this for me? Am I okay to blaze my own trail and figure out my own path as opposed to following what everyone else wants me to do? To me, that's a release of the insecurity of I'm not good enough. How do I fit in? And pulling into this is who I want to be. This is how I want to live. And that's okay. So that's what I read, but I want you to give me your take on it and feel here.
I would largely agree with that. And I think the key that you mentioned here is that you're okay, because this is where it trips people up. People tend to think that if this happens, if that happens, I won't be okay. Fill in the blanks. If I say this to my wife, I won't be okay, right? If I do this to my employees, I won't be okay. Something along those lines. And I think that's so what you said is really important. And in that, this fear of not being okay can be the driver of this poor behavior.
I think that's something that I struggled with for years.
Same.
So tell me about it. How did you?
It still shows up. It still shows up daily. And, over the last few years, I've done more and more work on myself personally, a big personal development guy. And one of the things that I've realized is that in order to lead others, in order to achieve the things that I want to achieve and hit the goals, these giant goals that I have for myself, I have to be the version of Josh that can actually handle that can actually accomplish that. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned just over the last few years. And what kept showing up was my internal belief, probably formed a long, long time ago, right? Yeah. That if something didn't go what I deemed right, that I wouldn't be okay. And in so many terms, I don't mean that I would keel over and die, but I mean that I wouldn't be whole, right? And there would be something missing in me that I would have to fill, or I would have to fix, or I would have to do differently. And that's I wouldn't be okay. My okayness was dependent on other people or other things or other circumstances, not on myself.
It was, to put it, that it was, everything was external validation rather than internal validation of I have value, I have worth, instead of trying to attain it elsewhere, some other way, some other measure. Is that kind of...
That's right.
Does that fit?
That's right. And I think that fits for a lot of high achievers.
I would contend that in the way I see, I think that fits for everyone. It just shows up differently.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of high achievers, it is the pursuit of a status, a number, an accomplishment for value. For others, it is, I'm going to actually go the other way, because even if I don't have those measures of success or whatever else, I'm not putting myself out to fail. And I can control that. That's okay. And so I think in my work, what I've done in kind of this same personal journey is like, how do those insecurities and fears manifest and show up? Because if I can start to understand that, then I can start to dictate the actions and the results. But if I don't understand the beliefs and the drives and thoughts, then I'm just along for the ride.
That's it. Who's driving? One of my favorite quotes, because people say this all the time, is time flies, right? And so as silly as it seems, it's going to seem simple. But I used to say that all the time. Oh, time flies, man. Time flies. And somebody said to me once, very, very simply put, they said, okay, it does. Who's the captain? I said, okay, I got you. I got it.
Have you ever read the book Power of Moments?
I have not.
Chip and Dan Heath. And one of the things they really go into, you have kids, Josh?
I do.
Okay. How old are they?
2 daughters, 8 and 11.
Okay. My daughter's 19. I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. And so I read it probably about the time your kids are where they're at now. And, people are just like, oh man, time just starts to fly. And before you know it, it's gone in the blink of an eye. So read this book, and, one of the elements that they share, and we saw this during the COVID pandemic, it just was a blur, right? Because there weren't like moments, power of moments, moments that we can reflect back on. Remember when we did that? Remember when we did this? And so everything just becomes a black sea of the same. And when you think of COVID, it was much like that. And so what I really took from that is with my kids, have moments, have experiences. Oh, remember when we went here? Remember when we do that? It's fun in my family text stream, with my wife and my three kids. We'll throw up pictures. Like just yesterday was my son's, who's 18, his first t-ball game when he was 4. And, see him stand in the battle. I mean, the tee's at his eye level almost. And it's like, now he's 6'3". And it's just like remembering those things. And it's kind of like, all right, it slows down time because you can go back and think of those moments as opposed to every day's just the same grind.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that slowing down time. One of the things I say a lot too is life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. And this is a great testament to what slows that down. And I've done a lot of research and reading and learning. I'm surprised I haven't come across that book. I'm going to have to get it now. It sounds right up my alley. But having these experiences and these moments that you can recall really helps to slow that time down, right? That's why I think when we were kids, time seemed to go so slow. Everything was a new experience when we were 8, 9, 10 years old, and everything was novel. Fast forward 20 years and every day's the same. You wake up the same, you go to the gym the same, you go to work the same, you do the same spreadsheets, you go, so I really like that idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, have you seen the movie Click with Adam Sandler? Right?
I have, a long time ago.
and there was a point in my life where I wanted one of those. Like it was those new challenging moments. Like, how do I get through this? Early in my professional career, I don't know if you felt the same early in your leadership career. It's just like, all right, just get me through this because I know there's going to be something beyond it. Pain of the moment sucks, right? And you just want to fast forward. But as I sit here now at 46, almost 47, it's like, those moments are what made me for what I am now. And so just embrace them as opposed to like run from them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's, again, kind of turning this to ourselves as leaders. This is something that I believe is our responsibility to help others understand as well.
Yeah. How? Go ahead.
Give me 1 second here. I think, and we can keep rolling, but I think my audio is a little lopsided for you. Tell me if this is better. Am I coming through clearer now?
This is not much different. I don't know.
It's not much different. Perfect.
No. Okay.
Keep going.
We're good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
No, it's all right. Let me just mark both of these points. You've mentioned this. You wrote about it in your book. Blue is the new white. I have it right here, right? It's sitting there behind you. You weren't a reader, right? I don't know if I read a book during high school, right? Didn't. Ended up going to college, went to a very prestigious university. I just got by. Part of my difficulty in college, I didn't want to read. But now if I look around my office, I probably have 500 books in here. I kind of have picked up from you that you embraced reading and learning. What was the switch for you?
Wow. I don't know that I ever thought about that, because you're absolutely right. If I panned the camera over here, you would see my 500 books on the bookshelf over there. I absolutely love reading. I think it was tied to the independence of learning. So you couldn't pay me to read a book in high school either. And I think it's because these things were being forced on me. What did I say when we started this episode? People resist what they're told and they accept what they conclude. Yeah. I concluded that I could get and retain information faster if I got it myself. And by that, I mean reading books, right? I don't mean that I manifested it. But
I get it.
Yeah, but I think that looking back and being challenged with that question, so thank you, it was the independence in learning, the ability to learn as fast as I deemed possible.
Let me ask the next question. At what point did you start to, activate on what you were learning to really figure out, all right, how can I make this work for me?
That came much later. I didn't learn that the point of knowledge wasn't knowledge until well into my career. Then I started to understand the point of knowledge is action. And then that's kind of when it clicked, and I had to reread a bunch of the books that I had read previously because I had the knowledge, but I had never put it in practice.
Now let me ask you this next one. Where does mentorship fit into that equation?
Yeah. So mentorship is, I believe, the next level, right? It's one of the reasons I started a podcast as well. I'm an avid reader, and it's one thing to read the book. It's another to practice the things you read in the book. It's yet another to sit beside someone who wrote the book and have them explain to you why. And I kind of view that through the same lens as mentorship. Somebody who's out there doing the things that you are hoping to do, that practice the skills that you're hoping to acquire. And they're helping you step by step achieve that by holding you accountable. Because when you read, the only person to hold yourself accountable is you, which works for some people. But I think that, to truly unlock our potential, we really do need others to hold us accountable as well.
There's a piece when we talk about, and I love how that the desire to learn, right? I know I need to learn. It's something on me. For me, it came as a point where it's like, I think one of the first kind of business books I remember reading was, How Successful People Think by John Maxwell. And it was this idea, I need to think better, right? And just that spurred into my mind, which led into a whole nother dynamic in and of itself. But it's starting to, all right, whatever I'm doing isn't working. Let me go find answers to that it's accessible, in books. What I love how you share is kind of this idea that I've learned too is, if you really want to master something, if you want to know it, go teach it and live it out. And it seems like what I hear from you as you've led your organization now, that almost 15 years, right? It's probably something like that. I give it 12 years. As you've led that and you've played it out and you've had the success, man, there's a lot of mastery that's come through the knowledge that you attained early, but only came because you played it out.
Yeah. I mean, experience is the best teacher at the end of the day. I think it speaks right to what we were talking about.
Or evaluated experience.
Experience that leads to failure because you have no choice but to evaluate that if you want to keep going.
Yeah.
I think it's in the failure. And that's going to sound cliche. Every one of your listeners has probably heard this before, right? Fail fast, fail forward, but evaluation is great. And I think it's necessary, but I also think you don't have to put too much emphasis on it if you are failing because you're going to naturally, the way that the human brain works is you're going to naturally move forward and not want to fail again. So intentional evaluation or not, as long as you're looking at failure as a data point and not an end point, you're going to get better.
Yeah. As opposed to failure as a dead end. Okay, now I'm going to go somewhere completely different. I think that's where it can be. You can have that experience, but if you learn all the ways not to go, that's one thing. But if that means it stalls you out and now it's analysis paralysis, that experience didn't give you anything.
Absolutely. And we see that. I'm sure you do too in your work all the time, especially, and I'll say in the younger generation, I see it a lot, is they try something, they fail, and then they pivot. Well, that thing didn't work. And I don't want to generalize. It's not all of that generation, but it's common. And I see it quite a bit in my work as well. They try it, they fail, it doesn't work. Okay, I'll do something else. Instead of saying, okay, I tried it, I failed. How can I do it differently? One piece of advice that I give to all of the clients that I coach, and I do, some coaching and stuff like that on the side for leaders and business owners and young entrepreneurs, it's don't try a million things to see what works. Try one thing and make it work, right? Stay in one lane, gain that experience, endure that failure, because that's what's going to ultimately lead to mastery.
So how does one figure out which lane to go in?
Well, take what I said with at face value, right? There's a big delta between try one thing and try a million things. And I think that people's definition of success changes, so you have to listen to that inner compass as well. There are times and there's experiences that I've had in my life where I've done something for years on end. Look at when I was a stuntman. I did that my entire youth. I thought I was going to do that the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I could have kept going. I could have kept failing. I could have succeeded wildly in that industry, but I did make a decision that I didn't want to. It wasn't who I was. It wasn't what I wanted out of life. And so I had to make that hard decision that I was going to do something else. It wasn't because I had failed. I'd failed 1,000 times in it before. It was because it no longer served me.
Yeah. I love that, because as you shared, I think about my own, career pivots. You're a stuntman. Now you run a, Inc. 5,000 business, HVA, repair service. Different. I was a nutritionist for dairy cows. Now I'm a speaker, author, leadership coach. Not much, similarity other than working with people. And same with like you. It's not you're working with people. But the element that I love what you share there, and I think this is important, is at what point is it no longer serving the values or the person that you desire to be? And I think that's where, man, if I think about where maybe our parents' generation, and when I say that, baby boomers that, as a product of a family, 2 college graduate parents who were like, man, you're going to college because that's it. And now looking at my kids, my daughter's in esthetician school, decided not to go to college. My middle son is going to end up going to college, but for athletics. My younger son, who, whatever. But if my middle son wasn't, he'd be, in trades. That's what he wants to do because he understands the value of it. And dude, that's a much more lucrative way to go. And I think understanding just to check it off the list, if I need to stay in this career for 20 years because that's what you do. Why? If it's no longer serving you, then it's just a prison and you're hostage.
Yeah. Yeah. And then your definition of success is completely divergent from what you actually think it means. And that becomes very difficult because this is where it gets cloudy, Tyler, right? Because this is where most people struggle to figure out what that definition is. They're told one thing their entire life, especially being raised by well-intentioned baby boomers that just wanted their children to succeed. And they were giving the best advice that they knew, which was you stick with this no matter what you like or what you don't, because this is going to be your path to success. Unfortunately, again, that's breeding, and it has bred a generation of people that think, oh shit, well, this may not serve me, but it's what I need to do. It's what I'm supposed to do. And then that leads to unhappiness. I mean, it does.
Well, I think it shows up in leadership because when you're, if I think about you and Josh, I would imagine as we've talked here, you sit down with someone and say, hey, they've worked, they're 39 years old. They started working in your company in the industry when they were 19 and they're like, Josh, I hate this. I don't know why I do this. Or you're sitting there and say, well, I need you to, this is your job. You got to do it. Or you're like, let's figure out what serves you. My guess is the latter, right? Because you've gone through that. And I think too often leaders don't want to do that out of their own fear of like, well, I didn't do it, so you can't either.
Yes. Such a great point. Such a great point. We tend to run other people and other people's decisions through our own filter of what we've experienced. And I think that's probably the reverse definition of empathy, if I'm thinking about that now. But that is, it's almost a trap or a blind spot as we commonly hear it, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the other element on top of that. When somebody comes to their boss or a friend or a spouse and they're 39 years old and they say, well, I hate what I'm doing. Gosh, there's a conflict there, right? They probably have a family. They have responsibilities. They've got bills and mortgages, so you have to be very, very transparent about the repercussions of the changes too, and then weigh that against what your real definition of success is. Because there's a really big difference between thinking that you've lost your passion for something and just not being aligned with the work anymore. And this is what confuses people. And I don't know how many people out there have said, well, I'm not passionate about this anymore. I'm going to go do something else, and then fall on their face and lose everything. I'm sure it's happened. Yeah. I would do everything in my power not to let it happen to somebody on my team. But this type of challenge from a leader to somebody, and whether you're leading a family, a friend, or a colleague is necessary. Ask these tough questions. Help people conclude what it is that they are trying to find.
I think what's interesting is you really have to stop and take ownership in it to where we're at. Think about it, well-intentioned parents go to college, get that degree. Okay, great. Might be 20,000 in debt, might be more. That's a good business investment. You're going to get a job. Like, well, that doesn't show up. But then you're beholden to, oh, I have to live this out. I have to, see this through because this is what I've done, instead of saying, no. I have the agency to take the ownership and say, we thought that at one point, conditions are different. Let's be flexible. And how do we navigate that? How do we rectify that? In your opinion, if you were wrestling with that, what questions would you start to ask?
I would start with the questions you ask because they're really good. But I'll gravitate to this because this is something that I've been doing for a while now, and that has helped me gain clarity in situations like this. And it's fair to acknowledge that, maybe these types of decisions aren't always life-changing. Maybe they're micro decisions. Maybe it's, some hard conversation that you need to have with an employee, or, something that you want to tell your kids or teach your kids or help. I don't know, but you turn the lens on yourself, right? You look yourself in the mirror, not physically, but by way of journaling, I think really helps. So these thought-provoking questions as you pose to others, they work equally as effective on yourself. And so, one of the things that I've done and I've been doing for a while is I keep a journal. It's one of the last things I do before I go to sleep at night. And I ask myself these hard questions. And it's made up of 3 parts. It's the question and the answer, which is part 1, right? A difficult question. How did I show up today? And you got to be honest. You have to be radically transparent with yourself. This is for yourself. And then you answer it honestly, just thought dump. And then that section number 2 is you start off with the lie that I'm telling myself is, right? And then, so that's the second section. What are you lying to yourself about? Why is it that you posed this question and then had this brain dump of an answer? Here's the lie. And then in my case, the third one is the man I want to be is, and then that's the reframe. That's here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm thinking, here's where I think I'm wrong, here's where I need to go. And then that internalizes it. Not overnight, but it's the first step in awareness, recognition, and actually doing something to change your circumstances.
Through that experience, what's something that has hit you right between the eyes?
I think the biggest thing through that work would be how much my being okay was tied to my wife being okay. And I'll say this as a married man who grew up the way that I grew up, I have an enormous responsibility to take care of those around. My definition of taking care of those around me sometimes meant protecting their feelings, making sure they were happy all the time. Tyler, that is a trap. Whether it's with your spouse, your kids, your friends, your colleagues, your employees, whatever. You cannot be responsible for somebody else's happiness. You get the pull, right? You get the pull. You love your wife so much. All you want is to make sure that she's happy. Same thing with your kids. But that's a fool's errand. And when you tie too much worth to that, it can be detrimental to your progress, your own well-being, and your own self-worth. Because when ultimately you figure out that people are going to be sad anyways, sometimes without proper context, you could think that's your fault.
You mentioned it earlier, and that comment leads me down a path, and I'll get there. Talking about empathy. How do you define it?
So empathy to me is not feeling pity or feeling sorry for someone. Empathy to me is associating with the feelings that they have, understanding why they could feel the way that they do, and just being with that. I think that's the key for me. This, I don't think, is in the common definition you hear.
Yeah, that's good.
But being with that and just making space for it and letting it show up organically, however it's meant to show up in that moment.
I asked the word because as I was trying to develop myself and grow and understand, it was something that I was really processing. And of course, it's popular 7-8 years ago. Of course, everyone's writing about it. It's like starting to be this thing, and constant, would hear these definitions. I'm like, put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, well, I have a size 13. I don't know what you wear, but maybe my shoes fit. Maybe my feet don't. Like, if both of us are in there, it's not going to be comfortable. Or, to see with someone else's eyes or put yourself in their spot. That doesn't work for me. And something that I came up with that I think aligns with what you just said, but also how you framed it, what you had to relearn, was that I'm not responsible for other people's happiness. And if I try to be, that's going to tear at me and actually make it harder for me to actually support them. That's what I picked up, right?
Absolutely.
And what I finally came up with, a definition for me, especially in a leadership role, it's to put your arms around someone and walk with them. And I think that definition, the way you framed it, fits so well because, as you said, I have to be there. You can't put your arms around someone and not be there.
Right.
And the element that I've really tried to use, whether it's through my speaking and coaching and help people work through from a leadership perspective, is you got to be vulnerable. You raise up your arm. That's a vulnerability, right? I want to affect your happiness so much because I don't want you to hurt, but I also understand that's not possible. So I got to be okay with that. I got to be with you in the moments when it's hard, and I can't be an a-hole about it. I can't tell you to suck it up, get over it, right? Especially the girl that like, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
The third element is like understanding if I put my arm around you and walk with you, we have to go at the same pace. I got to slow down to where you're at. Because if I'm racing a mile ahead and I'm, hard charging and going, which is, typically my personality, man, that hurts people because I'm leaving them instead of saying, oh, no, let me slow down. We can go at this pace together. Maybe we go faster. Maybe we just go at a pace that works for you. And I value that because there's a place for you here in this organization or, obviously in a family. Then I have to hold myself to that instead of being upset and saying, why aren't you going faster?
So is it your job as the empathizer to match the pace?
I think that's where the vulnerability comes into place of being honest and saying, hey, is this the pace you want to go?
Yeah.
If this is the pace you want to do, then this is the pace we'll go. If you're like, no, I want to go slower. All right. Then we slow down. If like, why are we going so slow? Or like, let's get with it. Let's go. But I think the point there is that vulnerability of being willing to ask.
That's great, right? That speaks exactly to my curious questions that we started the show with. You have to understand before you can make any change for yourself or anyone else.
Before you learn to ask questions, how hard was leadership?
It was impossible. I was managing. I wasn't leading.
Define that even deeper, managing.
Managing, I was holding systems, processes, procedures, benchmarks, KPIs to the standard of others, or rather holding others to the standard of those. And that became my filter for everything. That's how you either are great or you suck. And that was it. And your job, by God, is to do what I tell you. That was it. No wonder I wasn't getting a response. Right? It sounds terrible. And I can look back now and I can be like, what the hell was I thinking? But yeah, without questions, because I believe that also set me down the path of understanding empathy too. I think it's kind of in the same bucket.
Yeah.
It really helped me understand that, in order to lead, I need trust. And I can't get trust without understanding, without, helping people achieve things for themselves, without empathizing.
Would people, if we were to go back and ask people that worked for Josh at that point, how do you think they would describe you?
I don't know where the fuck they are. They all quit.
There was a part of my life where my wife would just describe me as being an a-hole, right? Yeah. And it was that same kind of that element where, for me, it was it was a drive. It was, I have to prove myself and that's how I'm going to show up for myself. But then that's going to be what I put on others. And the description that I got from people is all about you. And it's like, but it's not, I'm not doing this for me. I don't have these like gargantuan goals that I have to get at all costs. It's like, I want to go together because that's fun, like being a part of a team. And so I had to really, really do the work, as we've talked about, to understand why was I that way? How do I need to be different? Which sounds like too much to your point. It kind of like you had the knowledge. Great. Here's all the knowledge. Go do the knowledge. But the missing piece was actually how to engage and influence and lead people. That's what I hear you saying.
Yes, absolutely. Leadership is influence.
I know that. I know that definition from a mentor.
Yeah.
You have a podcast. We talked about this earlier. Everything they don't tell you. What's the one thing that if we were to sit here and we've gone through a lot, right? We've gone back and forth. The one thing that you're like, man, I would have solved a lot of heartache if somebody would have told me this.
I have one thing and listen, whenever I say I have one thing, it means I have one thing lately. This version of Josh has one thing.
Sure.
One thing I gravitate to a lot as a result of the show and what I've learned is a phrase I think I came up with. I try to give credit where credit is due. I have a hard time giving credit to myself, but I think I came up with this, and it's if you understand the game, you can't lose.
I like this. I have a derivative.
Would you like me to unpack it?
Please.
Okay, so I feel like the only part of you that thinks it's a game is your ego. And so the point of the saying, if you understand the game, you can't lose, points to your ego is usually the cause of your suffering. And if you can break out of that and react to life as it comes, it doesn't have power over you. You have power over it.
Let me say it in my words, because I think you're going to be, it's funny how it is similar. You'll never lose the race. The only race you'll ever lose is when you're trying to run someone else's. Let me say that again. The only race you'll ever lose is when you're trying to run someone else. And where you use ego, I use insecurity. It's that same, kind of authentic, genuine. We went through that before. It's different sides of the same coin. It's just a different translation in a way of the same word. Is when you understand we all have fears and insecurities. And you can sitting over there on the other side of the room. It's like, yep, there you are. Okay. I own how I'll show up. I'm going to, accept it in the moment. Yep. That was a bad moment. Got the best of me, but I can own it. And then I can try to work at what was driving it in the moment to rectify that moment to, again, if you understand the game, you never lose. Like, oh, the game is I get to acknowledge when my ego is at play and say, we're not going to play that game.
Yes. Yes. A very easy example for your listeners, right, is say you're in a meeting or you walk into a meeting and you are nervous as hell. You can sit there and let your nerves control it, or you can sit down and you can look that other person in the face and say, I am nervous as hell.
Absolutely.
And then feel that weight lift and navigate through that conversation. You don't have an obligation to hide that part of you from whoever is sitting in front of you. That's how you can show up.
I mean, just let's play that because it's kind of fun. You're sitting down with someone and say it is, you guys are going to do a big project and you have a major supplier. Say it's, I don't know if you work with them. I'm just going to use a brand name. It is what it is. You sit down with Carrier. All right. Carrier's got a major bid, and you sit down and you're like, we haven't taken on a job to this level yet, right? Just imagine your State Farm Stadium. Like, all right, you're going to redo all the HVAC there, right? Maybe you guys have, I don't know, right? Big project, a big facility, or maybe all of Arizona State, trying to throw all these things in, right? And you sit down and like, dude, that's a big number. Like, a little nervous. You say that to the company representative. Maybe it's their chief sales officer, big enough. What are they going to say back to you? Oh, are you nervous? I just told you I am. What do you like? I laid all my cards on the table. How are you going to use it against me?
They can't. The worst they can do is say, why? Yes. Why are you nervous? Okay, well, let's have a conversation. Then the sale becomes that much easier. I promise you.
100%. And it's also if they say, hey, Josh, oh, you're nervous. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Maybe we aren't the right fit. Great. Then you saved all of us a bunch of heartache. And vice versa. It's like, oh, we can't fulfill your needs. We're not going to make it up. Because if they're being truthful and vulnerable, and you just told them, it's like, hey, dude, I don't know if we have the crew right now, whatever that nerves may be. Right. And they're saying, oh, okay, well, how do we need to stage it? What do we need to do to calm it? I think that is one of the lessons that I've learned. And it comes back to my term of authentic vulnerability. Dude, I'm just showing my cards. I'm just being genuine.
That's it. And a phrase I love to use in a situation like that is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how. Let's just have a discussion. If it works, if we can make it work, let's try it. Let's exhaust all options. I'll tell you why I'm nervous. You tell me why I shouldn't be. And if we can't converge, then we'll walk.
I think as much as I describe that as a sales situation, that can be the same for a leadership role, a person on your team. Even as a leader, it's like, hey, dude, I'm nervous about having this meeting. I like you as a team member, or man, this has been difficult. I don't know how this is going to turn out. Right. That vulnerability, like, okay, yeah, that's truthful.
Name it. This can, how about in a termination? Yes. And we're trained to say as little as possible, which is perfectly fine too. I get every aspect of that, but that doesn't include naming things about yourself, sitting down and saying, this is incredibly difficult for me. We're going to have a tough conversation. I'm not going to enjoy it. I've got to let you go.
Yeah. It's way easier than being
disarming.
The a-hole. When you go to the next conversation with the person, because everyone knows, then all of a sudden, and I shared this video the other day. I remember a situation where someone walked to my office and they resigned and, said, hey, I wish you the best of luck, gave him a hug. And my wife and a couple other staff members like, wow, we can't believe how you handled that. They didn't see that heart of me because I was hidden behind that. I have to be intense, that driver. as I was protecting my own, can I even do this? Do I know what I'm doing? Or, are they going to value me? Instead of just like, this is who I want the best for you. If it's here, great. If it's somewhere else, awesome. Josh, before we end here, where can people learn about blue is the new white? Where can they, and I appreciate the white shirt. I mean, black. I mean, I get the white shirt there, dude.
Thank you.
Where can people learn more about that? Your podcast, your business, any of the things that you'd love to direct them to?
Yeah, appreciate it. I'll give you one spot. It's joshzolin.com, JoshZolin.com. There you can find everything that I do, from Windy City Equipment, my day job, the company that I run and operate and grow on a daily basis, to Blue is the New White, the book, the Academy, and of course the podcast, Everything They Don't Tell You, where, we talk to highly successful people about becoming the person capable of that success.
Love it. Thank you for joining. Thank you for everyone watching on YouTube. If you could hit the button as well as the bell to subscribe whenever we drop new content. Lastly, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, if you can rate and review this episode, it will help more people find impactful leaders like Josh. One last thing is, if you got value from this conversation today and you'd like to learn more about either any of my book, The Things We Hide, or joining the roundtable, I'd love for you to reach out. Go ahead and send me an email, tyler@tylerdickeroff.com. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.